Before we get into the astrology correlated to specific dysfunctional family roles, I want to give a little background information on the roles and how they work. In abusive families, such as alcoholic and narcissistic families, it has been found that children take on specific roles. In specific family systems, such roles, such as the golden child, scapegoat, and the lost child, are said to be assigned by the abuser. The abuser has a need to assign these roles as a way to give the family a semblance of normality or being able to function, so that they can justify to themselves, through denial, their addictive and abusive behaviors and continue on in their abusive behaviors. Other roles, such as the hero, mascot, and caretaker, are said to be adaptive roles that children take on themselves in order to try and make the best out of a horrible situation. One thing to note about these roles is that a child can fill more than one role at a time with different people or at different ages in childhood. These roles are not fixed and can be reassigned according to the abuser's needs. There's not a whole lot on the internet on these specific roles, but I was able to find a decent article from Randy Fine, which I will include the link to in the description box of this video. In my own personal experience looking at the connection between these roles in natal charts, I have found certain roles to correlate with certain signs. This correlation can be seen most frequently in placements such as the South Node, Mars, the Moon, Chiron, and probably even Saturn. The first role we'll look at is the golden child. The function of the child that is assigned this role is to represent the parent's perfect image of herself, or put another way, the abusive parent projects the ideal version of themselves onto the golden child and lives vicariously through the child. The sign that I feel best correlates to this role is Libra, due to there being no boundaries, and often enmeshment between the parent and the child. This makes it very difficult for the child to separate or form his own identity, which would be symbolized by Libra's opposing sign of Aries, which is the sign of separateness from others. Another indication of the Libra golden child connection is that the parent usually picks the child who most embodies the qualities of being socially graceful or attractive. The golden child's job is to make the parent look good. The parent is using the child as an extension of themselves, so they pick the one that has the best, quote-unquote, relational traits. Another primary responsibility of the golden child is to keep the parent happy, and Libras often have trouble knowing how to balance their own needs, wants, and desires from those of others. According to Randy Fine, the golden child learns from a very early age that his superficial qualities of pleasing and looking good, not his inner qualities, are what make him likable and lovable. If you identify with a golden child role, check your chart for planets or points in Libra or the 7th house. Whatever you find in this sign or house will give you clues as to why you played this role in your family. For example, if you have the South Node in Libra or the 7th, you played some version of the golden child role in a relevant past life. Another example, if you have Chiron in Libra or the 7th, your core wound is attached to the golden child role in some way. Next, we come to the scapegoat role. The function of the child assigned this role is to carry the shame and anger of the abusive parent, as well as keep any negative attention of the abuser off other family members and on the child. The abusive parent projects their shadows and own negative qualities onto the scapegoat child. This is the child that is labeled as being the black sheep of the family, or the bad child. If we look at the psychological roles of Scorpio, they are all associated with this badness that is projected onto the scapegoat child. In his book, An Introduction to Astrology by Glenn Perry, Some of the archetypal Scorpio roles he lists are the criminal, terrorist, demon, prostitute, and witch. Perry's analysis of Scorpionic psychology is very fascinating, and something I hope to be able to do a video on at some point in the future. If you haven't read his book, I highly recommend it. Anyways, I have seen over and over again how people who carry Scorpio energy often end up being scapegoated or ostracized in their families. One quality of scapegoat children is believing that they are inherently bad and rotten, and therefore carrying self-destructive labels and behaviors forward into their adulthood. Another thing that correlates Scorpio to the scapegoat is that the scapegoat is the most cognizant of what is going on within the family dynamics. For this reason, they will often fight back or rebel against the abuser. The scapegoat understands what the abuser is trying to do to her and to all the other members of the family. The scapegoat is very protective of their family members, which is another Scorpio trait, and therefore understands that they are taking the brunt of the abuse, usually in the forms of physical, sexual, and emotional violence. They are used to being the target of the abuser's negative attention, and will therefore take the abuser's attention off of other family members and onto themselves, in order to try and save their family members from experiencing pain. The scapegoat has the ability to understand the subconscious dynamics happening in the family because Scorpio rules human psychology, and those who carry Scorpio energy are natural psychologists. They are able to easily understand human psychology and motivation. If you identify with the scapegoat role, check your chart for planets or points in Scorpio or the 8th house. Whatever you find in this sign or house will give you clues as to why you played this role in your family. Now let's look at the lost child role. The abusive parent has no need for the child who falls into the lost child role, and they therefore are usually the most neglected child. The signs that best correlate to this role are Taurus and possibly Aries. The lost child correlates to Taurus in that the lost child finds it difficult to let others into their own private world, which is a hallmark signature of the Taurus energy. Taurus has this private world that it has a hard time letting others into. This allowing of other people or even things into the world that they have built for security purposes feels threatening to Taurus. The act of merging with another and allowing that other into the self is represented by the opposing sign of Scorpio. And this other, it could be a person, an idea, a belief, material things. Another correlation to Taurus is that the lost child experiences not having anyone to rely on except themselves. They therefore become very independent and self-sufficient. That self-sufficiency being another quality of Taurus. The final association is material and physical neglect. The lost child is often the most physically neglected, not getting proper medical attention or found wearing ragged or soiled clothes. Therefore, they often become attached to their material possessions more so than people. And anybody who studies astrology knows that second house Taurus is really big on material possessions and things. Taurus is very conscious of material security and therefore feels secure through its material possessions, including money, another Taurus object. Taurus also appreciates anything to do with the 5 senses. As the first of the earth signs, the body and all its pleasures are of supreme importance. The fact that Taurus values what it does is proof of the correlation between a lost child's experience and the sign of Taurus. The connection between the lost child role and Aries has to do with their qualities of rarely talking in isolation and social ineptness associated with Aries. Whenever I see Aries or the first house in a malefic or karmic planet or point, or involved in a harsh aspect, I know right away that this child was severely neglected, unseen and invisible as a child. If you identify with the lost child role, check your chart for planets or points in Taurus or Aries, or the second or first house. Again, whatever you find in this sign or house will give you clues as to why you play this role in your family. The first of the so-called self-assigned roles is the hero role. The function of the child that assumes this role is to mask the true dysfunction of her family to the outside world. This child fulfills this role both inside and outside of the home. The sign that best correlates to this role is Capricorn. We can see this is the case by looking at the following qualities of the hero. They are often the oldest child, and they are the parentified child, being given adult responsibilities at an early age. They are the little mom or dad of the house, filling in and taking care of the adult responsibilities, usually for the younger siblings, that the abuser is neglecting. Some of their other qualities which are associated with Capricorn include being controlling, being outward recognition and success-oriented, and using emotional suppression as a coping mechanism, which are all tied to Capricorn. If you identify with the hero role, check your chart for planets or points in Capricorn or the 10th house. The next role is the mascot. This one is a little trickier to correlate, at least for me, due to the function of the mascot, which is to take attention away from the problems occurring in the home by lightening the mood through levity and comedy. One quality of the mascot is a happy-go-lucky attitude, and because Sagittarius is both optimistic and comedic, I can definitely see a child with a Sag, South Node Mars or Chiron taking on the role of the mascot. Another sign that could be associated with this role is Aquarius, based on the following quote from Randy Fine. The mascot exemplifies herself as an object of ridicule through self-deprecating humor, ditzy behavior, or foolishness. Representing herself as a caricature of a human being, no one, including herself, takes her seriously. As adults proficient at mitigating suffering through humor, many mascots become entertainers. Sadly, they will never enjoy the happiness they give others. After a lifetime of repressing their own pain, they are likely to suffer from chronic depression. Never having developed an authentic self, they will always struggle with feelings of emptiness and loneliness. And there's a lot of keywords in that quote that has to do with Aquarius. For instance, Aquarius does not take the personal self seriously and is the sign associated with finding humor with the human condition. Also, Aquarius delights in making fun of their own foolishness. And the Fool in tarot is associated with the sign of Aquarius. Aquarius, in its shadow expression, is cut off and aloof from its feelings, which is another quality of the mascot. Finally, Aquarius is associated with the authentic self, something the author says the mascot will struggle to develop. If you identify with the mascot role, check your chart for planets or points in Sagittarius or Aquarius, or the 9th or 11th house. The last role I will cover in this video is the caretaker. The function of the child assigned this role, according to Randy Fine, is to manage the ever-changing, explosive moods of his family. The caretaker is an emotional rescuer and listens to, supports, and nurtures their family members. And I could see 3 signs correlating to this role, all for different reasons. Because the caretaker counsels, pacifies, and mediates in the family, some caretakers will carry Libran energy. The caretaker child is emotionally sensitive, so we are talking about a water sign here. The caretaker is always giving out love to others, but has a hard time receiving love. The caretaker becomes a rescuer and savior. They are easily taken advantage of and can become doormats. And all these qualities speak to the sign of Pisces, but I also feel that Cancer is a possibility here as well. If you identify with the mascot role, check your chart for planets or points in Libra, Pisces, or Cancer, or the 7th, 12th, or 4th house. If you come from an abusive home and are not sure which role or roles you filled, the article link in the description box of this video will be a good resource to help you figure that out. I'd be interested in hearing what roles you played in your family and what placements you find in your own chart that show that connection. So feel free to share in the comments if you wish. Thanks so much for listening.